March 14th. Story time with Uncle Carl. How bizarre. At a time when the unprecedented time in global history, and I do believe my country's not going to be a pretty place over the next few months, and I'm going to read stories to people I don't know from around the globe. How bizarre. I see silver and gold is restocked on the TD site this morning pretty well, but I still stick to my theory. A lot of people have realized in Canada, Trudeau controls their money through the banks, and they're pulling out their fiat currency and buying physical gold and silver. I think that's a good idea. Written introduction to the writings. I'll have to follow this up with a more detailed oral explanation. I was born in 1962, the first 15 years of my life spending the majority of my time with a small number, 20 to 30 of assorted equine. Horses and ponies, mostly of mixed lineage, no purebreds. Spell that, no expensive stock in our C-grade dump. Some were never to leave, some left and returned again, and some passed briefly through. All of my older siblings had left the nest, and my father's health was ailing. The chores fell mostly on me. We rented a small farm, 60 acres, just inside the town limits of a small southern Ontario town of around 3,000 people at the time. To say the fences were tired would be an understatement. The large bank barn was struck by lightning and burnt to the ground in 1967. Chainsaw nose story from yesterday. My dad loved the horses and ponies. He bought and sold and boarded them. His motivation was certainly not monetary. The fences were the bane of my existence. A motley assortment of page wire well past its prime, rotting barbed wire and cedar rails leaning this way and that. I had to feed the horses in the winter before school, and the fences, those accursed fences, I was at them all the time. Hooves to check and clean, stalls to muck out, equine injuries and ailments to monitor and attend, colts to halter, train, and often saddle break. Problem children, I called them, whose behavior I was expected to sort out. The enormous drive to plow in the winter, grain bags to haul and stow, runaways to round up. I did mention the fences, didn't I? Oh, those fences. Late for school with hay in my hair. No intramural after school activities for me. All that and a dilapidated old manure spreader and broken down equipment. I don't tear up just yet. By and large, I loved every minute of it. In the slack times in the summer heat, I would often follow, watching and trailing and interacting with the herd as they drifted about the farm throughout the day. Piece of blue salt block chipped off in my pocket, a slingshot or a pellet gun maybe. The salt was for the abundance of assorted wild apples that grew on the fence lines. I'd perch in a tree, peel the apples with my teeth, and rub the salt chunk generously about the apple as I watched the herd, the groundhogs and the chipmunks and the birds and whatever else. I never had a green apple bellyache once, nor did any of my buddies as I ever recall. But my mother was driven to distraction when she caught us chipping the blue salt for our apples off the blocks that the horses and cows had contoured with their tongues. She gave us all our own salt shakers for the apples and expressed her mortification at the concept we were in essence licking at the same salt block as 60 or so farm animals. By noon, we threw the salt shakers away and went back to our original method. Kind of hard to explain. I think it was a texture thing. We preferred the blue salt to the white or the brown. So did the cows, oddly enough. But anyways, the cows, bovines. Ooh. Always struck me as odd as how a cattle man will curse a horse and claim them stupid, and a horseman just the opposite. I must be a horseman at heart, for I'm of a mind the only thing dumber than a cow is a rock. Dad would pasture 25 or 30 head of cattle every summer. Horses detest cattle and do their best just to ignore them. I'd have been delighted to ignore them as well, but the only glimmer of intelligence they ever seemed to display was to wander the fence lines and worry what they perceived to be a weak spot. I held protest every year when the cattle showed up and utilized the event to wheedle fence repair materials out of the ever frugal old man. In hindsight, the cattle probably went a long way to support the operation, and we had no shortage of what would now be non-GMO organic fed beef. Well, the majority of these stories are orientated towards the horses and the ponies, of their intelligence, or often lack thereof, their grace and beauty, and their extraordinary individualism. There will be also other characters come into play as well. The cows, of course, the stalwart little 9N Ford farm tractor that I considered my own personal property, the stream that ran through the farm, the barn rubble left from the fire, and of course those dilapidated fences. There are a couple of stories with a less than happy ending, but such is the way of life as a whole, not just on the farm. Equine display a range of intelligence, diversity of personality, temperament, jealousy, loyalty, love, and even humor, as what we humans do. I found as the stories progressed, I could manage sometimes to abbreviate them slightly, but not to really adulterate them in any fashion. I've tried to stay true to my recollections of the animals, the events, and the people, of course, as well. My friends criticized the extent of coarse language. You can't write that language in children's stories. I said, I'm not writing children's stories, although there are some that would be considered a youth read. Who are you writing for then, they'd say. I said, I don't know. I don't have a target market. I've always written. It's just, I can't help myself. It's too much coarse language, Scotty. I said, look, you suppose it's realistic to say that Todd said, oh shoot, as he looked up at the tractor looming over him, no doubt thinking it was the last sight he'd ever see? You know, you can't just say, oh shoot. Or when that big mare near killed me, I said, oh golly gee, that hurt like heck. You'll meet that mare. Oof, evil creature. Anyways, I said, look, I'm not writing about Andy Griffith and Opie and Mayberry. It was the 60s and 70s. We worked and played hard. We struggled to get ahead, and as I recall, people cursed a lot. So, I'll have to blank out some of my writings, and I'll have to do another oral introduction to set the scene a little better. So I'll come back with that.